Hey, Walter.
Hi, Sanya. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, and very welcome to Heart Talks. We're going to talk heart today, Walter. That you're very good at. I'm aware of
Oh,
it.
gosh.
We, we go long back, Walter. I remember you came to India around, if I'm not, wrong. It was 1996 or something.
I guess it was
97.
2000, and then I was there until 2007 or so. I started
Right.
to get to India, uh, let's say, working, giving classes, and so on. I think in the year 2000, when there was this all Asian Reiki convention happening in New Delhi.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. It was 2000, and since then, we've been on and off connected with each other, and you have been like, and you came for a Reiki retreat, and you are a Rainbow Reiki, founder basically. And
Mhm,
so I would want basically to start with asking you, if I have to ask from my
mhm,
side a very simple question, but
mhm.
I don't know if you think it's a very easy answer for you to give. If you have to tell, who is Walter Lubeck?
Mm. Well, I live and I create. You see, it's what I am is what I do, and I have a lot of things I like in life. I'm very happy here, living on a farm close to nature, with my wife and some pets, cats, horses, and being close to a little town where there are lots of artists. You know, Um, I I like to do art. I do uh, special graphics. I call Goddess Radionics, which change the energy in a room and help people to get into better mood and create vibrational medicine, these kind of things. And I also do music and publish them. I have started publishing music in the midst of the 90s and started doing music when I was, I think, 13 years old. So, but at that time, I did not do much meditation music. I did more soul and rock and blues and these kind of things as a singer, songwriter, and a drummer, in fact. Um, I give classes. I love to be with people who are like-minded and like to discuss things and like um, uh, to hear more about how people see the world. And I'm always fascinated by how many different perspectives there are. And this teaches me a lot, coming together with so many people from all around the world. I understand the world and the people a little bit better. The last 4 days, I gave classes for people coming from 6 countries in the one class and 7 countries in the other class, and seeing them united, and having great conversations and studying together and growing together. I think, hell, couldn't we all do like this? For what the heck do we need all this struggling and all this confrontation and we are better than you are, so on? Forget it. That is so old school. So
Yeah.
I see the coronavirus crisis also as an opportunity to find together via the web, globally, because before the coronavirus crisis, of course I gave webinars, but I was also traveling a lot, and people were coming to special places in Spain, UK, USA, Argentina, and so on. But now they are meeting at the same webinar, hearing, seeing each other, discussing things, and I really love that. And I love now, not in the beginning, of course. I love to give online concerts, doing meditation music, for people. I stopped doing music in the beginning of my 20s, and then started again at the beginning of my 30s. But then I did not do much more blues and rock because, well, I give spiritual classes, and usually people don't want to have rock and blues and these kind of things. But I have a djembe drum, and have electronic drums and synthesizers, and I use a didgeridoo, and I sing mantras and these kind of things. And too much of my music you can dance, that you must dance because your body wants you to. Otherwise, of course, I also like meditational music, but I like to combine this in a way with something which addresses the body. In my understanding, the body is the temple of the soul, and if you treat the temple right, the body is your soul as long as you're on this planet. So, well, these are some of the things I do, and I like to give and receive massage, and I like to step out in the warm sun at the moment. You know, when you're in the sun, it's like it's really like spring. When you're getting into the shadow, then woof, it's more like winter. But I'm really looking forward to having longer days and having more warmth, so I can get out my shorts and more of my Hawaii shirts. You know, so. That will be a great time. And I'd like to sit in the coffee shops and having a cappuccino and reading the newspaper. Okay, today I do this more online on my tablet, but there were times when I did this in paper. Gosh, could you remember there were newspapers which were really printed on paper? Well,
Exactly.
I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but these were interesting times. When you had these really papery papers, newspapers. And I hope that in summertime we are allowed to sit out in the coffee shops and I want to have a haircut. I really need a haircut. 10 weeks without a haircut. 10 weeks. It's That's not my choice of beer. I like to have a haircut every 3 weeks or something like that, because my hair likes to grow in different directions, and I cannot make it move into one direction. Otherwise, I would have to use these hair oils or they use in Italy. But this leaves marks on my couch, so I think it's no good idea. Besides, being enlightened in such a circumstance is um, is a good idea, because then you always can retreat into your enlightened self and just look from above down. But then your wife calls you and says, "Would you please vacuum the living room?" And then you need to go back into your material self, and doing the cleansing of the living room. Well,
That's very, I like what you're saying, Walter, that you've given a huge, idea about how you are as a person. It was a very vivid introduction of a person, and I
thank
really
you.
enjoyed that. And because I know you are basically a very spiritual person. And so my curiosity about you is, when did this spirituality happen to you?
Yeah, when did this happen to me? It happened to me, let's say, in a more unconscious way when I was a child. Uh, when I just was able to walk, I was opening the door for dead dogs. So there was one big dog. We had the Barzoi, the Russian greyhounds, the big ones. One of them was living, but when the dog came in, I was seeing the other ones, the tribe which was with that dog, wanting to come in too. And my mother said, "Why don't you close the door?" I said, "Well, because the other dogs want to come in too." And she said, "What?" But she stayed with that. So I just got permission that I hold the door longer open so that all the other dogs could come in, and they were very friendly to me. And when I was even smaller, like baby, they were around me when I was in the garden of that big house. This was a warehouse. My father was entrepreneur, and he had warehouses, very big shops where people could buy stuff. So I was in the inner garden in the atrium, and there was our big dog, our Barzoi, but also the dead Barzois who were before with the family. And they took care of me, and they were very friendly. And so I grew up with dogs, and I love them very much. And later, it was a kind of, yeah, unpleasant thing, because when we moved to the countryside, whenever there was a tree cut down, I
Yeah.
was running away because I heard the tree crying.
Uh-huh.
And in our times, it is not common that you tell a tree that you have to cut it down. So
Yeah.
sometime before, so that the soul can go back. So
Uh-huh.
it's not something which the tree likes. It is not like an amputation for a human, but it's in a way it comes close. And there are the dryads who are related to a tree, and they are sad then when the tree is cut down. They understand that sometimes the tree needs to be cut down. They understand, for example, also that when there is a storm, that some trees will fall down. But usually they get some notice sometime before so they can adjust things. And if it's very short notice, they cannot do that, and then they're very sad and the tree's crying. So I was having a hard time whenever there was a tree cut down. But at that time, people did not understand that. So I had very, very tolerant parents on the one hand, and they were not following a certain religion. In fact, they were critical about, especially the Christian religion and the Christian churches. They had their experiences, but they were no, well, not believers. They knew that there was divine
Mm.
because they were living, my father longer, my mother shorter time, during the World War I and World War II times. And my father was able to save his own life and the life of his more than 1,000 soldiers he commanded several times during the World War, um, only because of his clairvoyance talents.
Okay.
And for him, this was just something normal. So he knew that if there was something going on, the clairvoyancy would tell him. And it was similar to my mother. Also, she had kind of knowledge of these things, but they did not do this in any professional way, or they did not do this, every day. They did not integrate this into daily life. For me, it was very strong. And when I was playing with other children in our very, very large yard, lots of trees, and there was another child having a sunburn and had pain. I was putting my hands on the back of the child where the sunburn was, and said, I put colors on it, and then you will see it's better. And it was. So at the time I was healing children who had a sunburn with some color healing, kind of color energy. But for me, it wasn't something I was thinking much about that. Then there was a time when my spiritual talents were unfolding.
Mm.
I think it was after a kind of initiatory disease. I had a whooping cough, and I had to stay at home for half a year and got antibiotics every day. It was a hell of a time because since that time, my health was even more ruined than before. My health was ruined from smallpox vaccination. I had big problems, but after half a year antibiotics, I was really, really down. But I think I needed that because after this time, my psychic talents were really waking up, but that was not pleasant. I was able to perceive all the dryads and the gnomes and the elves and the fairies and the angels and whatever, but nobody explained this to me. So
Mm.
I feared that. Even they were
Yeah.
very gentle and they kept their distance, but I always had experiences that they wanted to get into contact with me, and I feared them. I did not know what they were
Mm.
at that time. So I told my parents that there were monsters, and they said, there are no monsters. We would see them. I said, no, 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 you cannot. But they are there. And they said, well, okay. So there were times when I wasn't able, because of fear for monsters, to go at the upper floor of our house when I was
Mm.
about 7 or 8 years old. So one of my parents had to come with me. Same was with the cellar, for example. And then it started when I was reading more fantasy and science fiction novels. I started with this when I was about 7 years old, but I really got into it when I was about 9, reading 4 or 5 novels per week.
Mm.
I got, let's say, a language for that. I got an
Mm.
understanding, or let's say a better understanding of that, what was happening to me. Because in the fantasy novels and the science fiction novels, there were people with extrasensory perception, like telepaths. There were people who moved things with their mind, and there were people who were able to to speak with ghosts and these kind of things. So I got a better understanding of what was happening to me, and I bought my first books about at that time we called it parapsychology,
Mm.
uh, parapsychology, PSI. Yeah, I think it's more common in the English language world. And I started to use a pendulum. I
Okay.
started to build little card box models of the Cheops pyramid, and which were in proportion to the original one. And I was finding out that it was true. You can sharpen a used razor blade by putting it into the right place on a little matchbox into the little pyramid for a day or two. Then still the razor blade will be sharp again. I tried this again and again, and my mother was very astonished, because she said, "How is this possible? This was useless, and I get this again. It's the same thing, and it cuts again." So I found out that there was some practical outcome when you do these kind of parapsychology stuff, and I read about experiments being done about telepathy and about psychokinesis and clairvoyancy and about the poltergeist phenomenon, because at that time I got the first book from I think it's today even the only university in Germany who has
Mm.
a special department for parapsychology. So you can study parapsychology. It's in Freiburg and Breisgau. And the Professor Driesch, who was head of that department, he wrote books about poltergeist phenomenon and telepathy and all these kind of things. And I studied them. But I got in contact with science much earlier. When I was about 7 years old, I started to read books about science. I really consumed a lot of these books about physics, chemistry, about astronomy, and about biology and so on. And that gave me a hard time in school, because when the teacher asked in the second grade or so what we knew about the moon, I said, well, it has this kind of gravity, and it's so many kilometers away from the planet Earth, and it has that kind of orbit around the Earth and so on. This was not what he wanted to hear. He wanted to know that he wanted to hear that for a certain time of the month you see a big moon, and then later you don't see it anymore. And I was able to explain all of this, but he was not very fond of these kind of things, and thought that I was weird. And in fact, I was, of course. I also started to write a little bit. I was writing about my experiences in a kind of diary, but not regularly. So this background of science was really important for me,
Okay.
because it helped me to ground the experiences which I had. Um, I was then, when I was about 10 years old, going to the next larger town, into we call it gymnasium. I think you would call it high school.
Yeah.
And there were these two big libraries, one of the town, one of the county. And I had always 2 3 hours time, because the bus to my little village was only going 2 times or 3 times per day. So I was going into the libraries and was reading a lot. I was reading about quantum physics, about uh, astronomy, and about philosophy. I love to learn to love philosophy, Wittgenstein, Kant, Hegel, these kind of people, but also the Greek classics. And
Mhm.
they gave me a better insight in what life is.
Yeah.
What was difficult at that time, that there were not many people, well, in fact, nobody, who I could share what I was thinking and reading
Right.
with. But then I
Physics
think,
was not that
what,
popular, Walter.
what?
At your time, when you were 10, I don't think quantum physics was very popular between the
No,
normal
no,
people.
no.
So you were very, very ahead of time.
Well, in a way, I'm an Aquarian, so what can I do?
But where in Germany you were studying your gymnasium? Where were you born in Germany?
I was born in a little town called Helmstedt, close to Braunschweig, which is in Lower Saxony.
Okay.
And I was growing up in the midst of the Lüneburger Heide, which is a very countryside place, close to the larger town of Celle, which is close to the town of Hanover. So my
Okay.
high school years, I was in Celle. And I think that most people all around the world never have heard about that. Maybe they heard about Hanover because there is a big international fair, and there is the CeBIT, the computer fair, which attracts people from all over the
Yeah.
world. And I had
Yeah.
my years of university there, of college, but
Okay.
that came much later. So what I what I liked very much, when I don't remember exactly, I think I was 12 years old or something like that, 12, maybe 13. There were witnesses of Jehovah coming to us on Sunday, and they
Uh-huh.
wanted to talk with my mom and me. My dad was dead since I was 11. Wanted to talk about God, and my mom didn't want to see them. I said, "Well, I like, because I want to talk with these people, not because I had any belief in their religion, but they were able to discuss things in a structured way,
Right.
and they were able to show me why they came to a certain opinion, which
Right.
I did not need to agree to. They
I understand.
respected that, but they were very good in structured discussion, and I learned from them a lot to stick to a topic instead of going here and there and everywhere, talking about nothing and everything. So and they were friendly people, so I never had a bad experience with them. So for some years, not every Sunday, but let's say once or twice per month, they came for a coffee, and we discussed something for an hour or so. And I thanked them always, because even if I did not share their opinion, it was widening my understanding. So I learned a lot about the Bible.
I understand.
And even if I do not like the Bible very much, it is a book which influenced our civilization enormously, enormously. Even people who have completely different religion were influenced by it, because the colonial powers, like the English, the French, the Spanish, and so on, they exported these kind of ideas. So even if people are, let's say, Hindu or Muslim or have native religions, they had to learn to deal with this, and this helped me a lot to understand certain concepts. When I was 13, I think it was 13, I started to do music. I got a snare drum, I got a guitar, and I started to compose and make texts. It wasn't something I planned, and I never got a really structured teaching about playing instruments or singing. I just listened to people doing that, and asked them what they were doing, and was at every concert I could get. And well, then I started to gather people, young people like me, and we were doing rock and roll and hard rock and blues and soul and these kind of things. I was a singer. Did write songs, and I also played the drums, and I had quite a good time doing that. This was something where I started to get out of the more nerdy part of my life into the full life. I did not enjoy to be a nerd, which nobody understood. So it was easier than when I was in the musicians community to, well, have a good time. And at that time, I was also starting to be interested in learning more about girls. So also this was a good opportunity for me.
Right. Right. But now when you were 13 and you said you were in gymnastics, so what kind of interests were you having as a person, and what subjects did you take in your gymnastics and in your university? What was your subjects?
Well, I had a kind of two lives, maybe even three, because I was starting to I was starting to be guided by light beings when I was gradually harmonizing my fears. They started to guide me. In the Lüneburger Heide, which is a very rural place, a very countryside place, there are many of the megalith stones and many very old trees, really old, several hundred years, big, big trees. And they guided me there, and I was using my bicycle and later my um, motorcycle, going to these places. And I always was feeling that they wanted me to go somewhere when my sixth chakra started to hurt. It was like you put a corkscrew driver No, what you use to get the cork out of a bottle. I don't know what the,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It
Like,
was like this was being inserted in my sixth chakra. And then I knew I had to listen because they wanted me to go to a special place, the Lüneburger Heide. But nobody knew about that. I was just outside and did something. I did not talk about these kind of things because I knew that nobody would understand what I'm doing there. And they told me to lie down in such a stone circle or to hug a tree and just be with a tree and learn from the tree or learn from the stones. And I did. So I learned a lot about, let's say, practical esoterics. And I
mhm,
also used then the pendulum to see how the energy was moving. And then I had to close my eyes, and they said, now see with your mind how the energy goes. So first I had to use a pendulum, and then they told me to see this with my mind. That was one thing. Then when I started to do music, I had a lot of contacts with girls, and I had some shows, and this was apart from that. They did not know that. Even when I got a long-term girlfriend, she didn't know about that. She was a very psychic person, seen from what I know today, but she did not use it. But she was my first tantric teacher. I think she must have had kind of from her life some deep knowledge, because what we were doing, it was out of this world. It really taught me to venerate the goddess in a woman.
mhm.
And I think without her, I would not have had the opportunity for a long time to understand that
Okay.
in each woman is a goddess, and
Mhm,
you have a man have to adore her and venerate her, so she has the space to unfold that goddess.
mhm,
So that's, I would say, a couple project. So
mhm.
that was another thing. And then I was in school, and in school well, for the first years until I was, I don't know what you call this in English, I had very bad grades and I had to do the class again. But that was great, because in the class I was before, people were very, very narrow-minded. But when I then get to do this again, there were about 200 people, and this was not a kind of teaching lessons in one class. It was that you had your choice to pick the classes you wanted. And
Okay.
within these 200 people, there were many who were like-minded, who like to do music or like to go out and have a good time, discotheque and so on, doing party. And so I found more people where I could enjoy life. But still, my studying of natural sciences and reading of fantasy and science fiction books was going on. I did the music. I had some main main topics in, I think, biology and physics, but it was difficult because I knew so much about physics and chemistry and astronomy
Mhm.
that I understood that was what was in the school books was outdated mostly. So they
Okay.
talked, for example, that there were three stages of a substance, meaning
Uh-huh.
that you have solid matter,
Mhm.
and then you have liquid, and then you have a
Yeah.
gas. And
Mhm.
I had a dictionary about that, and they already had four. So there was plasma. But
Mhm.
they gave me a bad grade because I said there were four states of elements. No, no, there are
Mhm.
three. I said, well, but here are the professors. They're internationally acknowledged people, and they say it's four. No, no, that's not in our textbooks, and so on. So after having had some very good grades in the natural sciences, I uh, felt, well, not ignored, but I had really difficulties to get through with what I already had studied. So my grades were going down because I lost interest in that. I thought, okay, if they want to do that, that's fine for me, but I will not tell them what is in the textbook because it's wrong. You know?
Uh-huh.
So
Mhm.
we had a big discussion with the teacher. who said, well, we're living in a galaxy, and how many stars are in a galaxy? And I said, well, according to latest science, it's about 100 billion stars. Could be more, but this is what we know at the moment. He said, no, 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 no. We have some hundred here. I said, forget it. And I wanted to
Mm,
show him the book. He said, I don't want to see that. So
mm,
I lost interest in that, and I
mm,
hardly made it through school. I made it. I got my grades, so I could go to university and study business sciences. But it wasn't very good. But at that time, I was more interested in doing the music, and my girlfriend in reading, and of course, parallel, it was going on that I had to go to spiritual power spots. So I had really, really busy days, as
mm,
you might understand. And music was giving me a very good access to my body
mm,
and to understanding that what people really moves is not the mind,
yeah.
it's the emotion. And what I loved most when I was with the bands and did a show was,
Mm,
these minutes where you
mm,
were in the groove and the audience was in the groove, and you were with one energy, vibrating with one energy, and there was no energetical or psychological difference between the audience and the band. You were just
mhm.
as one. And I thought, this is what I want. This is what I
Ah,
want to do. But later I learned more about professional music. I came to know professional musicians, um, because I was able to go backstage when there were big concerts, and so I had some weird experience with some people. But what they told me is, think twice whether you want to go professional music, because it is so different from being semi-pro.
I understand.
You
I want to
really
break you
have
here.
to work. Yeah.
I want to break you here. You said something which was very interesting for me to hear, and I want you to develop a bit more on that.
Mhm, mhm.
You just said right now that when you learned you learned something about music,
Yeah.
that music doesn't move you, it moves your emotions.
Yes.
Just explain more about that, because this is a very
Mhm, mhm.
interesting thought, because
Yeah.
we are all energy beings and we have vibrations, and
Yes.
music has that.
Yes.
Explain more on that front.
Yeah. You see, there are several dimensions in the music which create this phenomenon. One thing which I found out is, when being a singer and a frontman for a band, that there is singing and there is singing. So you
Yeah.
could sing a song with the right notes, the right words, but you did not touch the people. So, and then you could do something with your voice. And at that time, I did not know what I was exactly doing, but I learned to do it. And I think that also the light beings had their part in teaching me that I could fill the room with my voice. So I could sing in a way that people were vibrating. And this I was working on as best as I could to do it better and better, because I wanted to get into that mood. And with the drums, when I worked as a drummer in the band, it was similar and different. It was similar because when you just give a rhythm, that's great. That's what you need for the music. But if you want to touch the people, your drum kit has to have specific kind of sound. So I was specializing in putting, I think the name is dampers on the skins of the drums, until the drums had the sound I wanted them to have. So you did not just hear them, you
Mm,
felt them. And then you just had to combine the different drums in a way that people were vibrating with the drums, because the drums, they give you this access to the body. The body feels the music when you play the drums. Some bass players can do that, but it depends a lot of the equipment. Today it's easier because you have the wonderful technology which we didn't have at that time. But with the drums you could do that. They are loud enough, and they are moving the body, even if we don't have a good PA.
mm,
So then another thing was, because I also created songs, I created melodies, I created rhythm, I created words, lyrics, that the lyrics do not have to be complicated. They do not have to tell full stories. What you need to do is you need to remind people to what is good in life, what makes life exceptional, what makes them exceptional.
mm,
And I
mm,
try to put this into music. And this I do until today, reminding people of what wonderful beings they are and
mm,
what they could contribute to a better world if they just would listen to their own wisdom.
mm. Wow, that's amazing. That's very good. Listen to your own rhythm, listen to
Mhm.
your own music,
Yeah.
and you'll create a song.
Mm.
So I totally agree with you. And so, I mean, it's very interesting thoughts that you're telling right now. But when you were little, like you were adolescent, when you were, and you had these experiences, and you were also at the same time very human when you're saying that I had my girlfriends, and so you had this three lives. You
Yeah.
so how were you as a child when you are, when you were there having three lives,
Hmm.
one here and one there and one, how
Hmm.
were you coordinating those lives? How were you coordinating Walter? Like Walter, were you, what were you doing with yourself?
That was quite a bit of work. And I disappeared for hours from certain parts of my life when I was going spiritual or when I was making love for 6, 7, 8 hours with my girlfriend because that was tantric. I always was interested in the oneness experience. And with her, it was exactly what she wanted. So we were dropping out of meeting friends and doing music and doing school whatsoever, and had just many, many hours where we created our own space and were related from heart to heart, were vibrating together and forgot all about the rest. It just wasn't there. It was our own universe. So that was one thing. And when I was disappearing from other parts of my life, from my girlfriend, from my music, doing music and so on, uh, going into the woods, uh, people would just not know where I was. My mother was busy with her own stuff in life, so she was letting me. Well, I think she just did not care. So I was doing my own life, and I had places to sleep, and I had places where I were putting my school books and stuff, and where I could learn. But I was hardly at home. And when I was at home, I was just on starting something new, was going out into the woods, or I was preparing something for school where I had to go home. But I did not have much time at home. So I did not have much of that family life. When I was in a family meeting like Christmas or Easter or something, for me it was like being a black swan, because there were not so many topics I could talk about with the people coming there. I knew this is my aunt and this is my brother and this and so on. But I tried to do some small talk, and when they asked me what are you doing, then I thought very hard, what could you tell, because most of that they had no access to, and they would be maybe horrified if I would have told them.
I understand. So it's like you were a loner, and you were instead of accessing your outside world, you were trying to access yourself, and they became a gap of that world, and you
Yes and
and
no. Yes and no. You see, I was also starting to work when I was, well, when was it? 15, 16, I think 16. I don't know exactly. But I was giving drum lessons, singing lessons. I was helping people getting better grades and was paid for that. So other school kids, even if I had no good grades, I was able to make people do better in school very well. So usually they got up 2 grades when they were with me for some months to get more money, because I had not much money from home. I had to work for my money if I wanted to have it for my life, and I wanted to have a good life, so I had to work a lot. And if you would have seen me in school or later with doing music in the special, I think you call it probe room, where we
yeah.
prepared the music, there were lots of people around me. So people would not have agreed to me being a loner, but I was inside, because a lot of what I did, I could not share with people. So I was a loner inside, but I had lots of context, lots, dozens of people were around me all the time on in the schoolyard, when I was doing music, when I was on places in the city, the coffee shops and so on. But then I disappeared and I was on my own.
Right, right.
Mm.
And how do you like, was this in terms of, I know when you have to survive, you're in a human body, you have to have some set of survival skill set, and you
Mhm.
were parallelly building that, or you've already built it. But how do you see you as a young adolescent boy of 16 to 18? Do you see, what do you see what you did right, and
Mhm.
what you could have done better for the kids who would meet today? And of course the times are different, so you
Oh yeah.
cannot match the times, there's a totally different
Mm.
times,
Mm.
but the basic teenager things are the same. So what is it that you can say that, okay, I did this one good, and
Mhm.
this I could
Mhm.
have done better, and so if there is a 16 years old, I would recommend this.
Well, first of all, I have to thank my spiritual guides because without them, there have been so many situations where I could have gone down the drain in many ways. But
Mhm.
they always created something within the situation which made me do the right decision. But I could not say it was my own wisdom. It was not, absolutely not. So, a recommendation for teenagers is um, read, read good novels, and do an art. If you like to dance, dance. If you like to do music, then perform any kind of music and do sports. I started to do martial arts when I was about, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old. I started with judo for some years. Then I took a break for about 2 years or three. And then I was going on with judo, with Shotokan karate, later with other kinds of martial arts like Aikido, Kung Fu styles, and Jeet Kune Do, and these kind of things. So do martial arts. Okay, if you don't want to do martial arts, do sports. But martial arts, if you have a good teacher, helps you to know who you are, that you get a natural self-esteem, that you know what your body can do, that you get a good idea um, of what training gives you. You know,
Right,
so I'm not against PC games and PlayStation stuff and so on. Absolutely not, because you see, you can get addicted to anything.
right,
uh, it's not alcohol that is bad. It's not the PC game that is bad. It is people having no alternative, and instead of getting what they really want, getting addicted to something which they have.
right.
Yeah. So
I'm with you.
what's available? So it's not the PC game. At that time, we didn't have PC games, but at that time, many people were on drugs. You know, it was the 70s, and there was marijuana around and hashish around, and people had access to LSD, and some people were drinking, these cough medicine because it made
Hmm.
them, and of course alcohol. And I wouldn't say that I have been immune to this, but I tried joints and they never created anything, nothing. So I could smoke a joint and nothing happened. So I thought, why should I do that? And
Okay.
that was a kind of role model for dealing with other drugs. So because this didn't work, I also didn't try the other stuff. But if this would have worked, maybe I would have tried the other stuff. I wouldn't say I was a hard drinker. I wasn't, but I had regular whiskey, and I was very good at making cocktails. I earned some good money in making cocktails and working as a DJ later. Um, that was great. And of course, I like to have cocktails. I like a good Manhattan and a good Americano, and pina colada. Sometimes it's too sweet, but it was it was something to earn my own money, which I recommend to teenagers instead of getting everything paid by parents or whatever. Earn your own money. When you are 15, you can work. Maybe you cannot work when you are 12, but when you're 15, you can work. And if you earn your own money, you find it easier to value the money, to understand this is your energy, this is your time. And if you earn this in an honorable way, doing something good to earn it, respecting what you're doing and respecting the person paying you for that, I think that is an extremely important lesson for life, that you understand the value of energy. Money is just energy. People say often money will bring down people, will corrupt the personality. No, you see, money and power in a way is very similar. It is like um, you have this devices where you can gradually make the light brighter in a room, from zero when it's dark to glowing light to very bright light and so on. I don't know how you call that, but for me, giving people much more money and giving people much more power is like bringing up the light so you see what's going on in their personality. It does not influence their personality, it just shows what they are. So if you give someone lots of money, you see how they are, so then they can start to work on their personality. So I think teenagers should work and get their own money and get
Yeah.
good self-esteem, that they know they can stand life. They do not need other people to pay them for life. They can work, they have two hands. Another thing which I think is important is read philosophy,
Mm.
especially classic philosophy. I do not care much about modern philosophy. Frankly, I don't understand them. But reading, for example, the works of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor,
Yeah.
who who never wanted to be a soldier. Never.
Mm.
He didn't want to be an emperor. But
Mm.
because all the other people died in his family or were not capable, he had to become emperor. And he had, for his whole life, he had to go to war. And
Mm.
reading the books where he wrote about what insights he got when he was doing that, they
Mm.
call it Stoic philosophy. I don't know. But for me, it's just a wise person.
Yeah.
And also reading something from Kant. Kant has its own language. You need to study the language of Kant. It's not that you just open the book, you read it, and you think that's it. You have to. You need a dictionary to see what he's doing there. But one thing is for sure: when reading Kant and trying seriously to understand what he's doing, you learn
Mm.
to think in a structured way, because he used language like a mathematical equation, like a formula. So you can really make your mind up and understand what
Mm.
thinking can do if you think straight and not, like that. So another thing which really gave me valuable insights is Hegel's philosophy of world history,
Mhm.
understanding that there is a red thread in history, and not
Mm.
just, at that time they were doing this war, and at that time they were having this kind of plague and so on, but
Mm.
understanding the red thread going through hundreds of years, where people were creating certain political systems and insights into technology and these kind of things. That was fascinating me. I did not get this in school. In school, history teachings were extremely boring for me, because it was just memorizing in which year happened what. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested not in learning about history. I'm interested in understanding the wisdom of history.
I'm with
So
you.
we do not have to repeat it again and again, like we do at the moment, with the strong people, like Trump and others in Poland, in Hungary, and so on. Gosh, we had that so often. Please learn, study history. You see where this is going to. And I think this will help people to develop a better understanding of what politics is, what life could be.
Mm.
And one thing which I like when I read philosophy is that you can share the wisdom, the thoughts of thinkers you will never meet, which might
Mm.
be long dead, but their wisdom stays on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is, for example, Ludwig Wittgenstein, a philosopher of the Feuerbach school, about 100 years ago. He wrote that what you are able to talk about, you are able to think about. That seems to be simple, but it's revolutionary. I got this contact to Ludwig Wittgenstein from the guy who gave me lessons about mathematics out of school. I don't know how you call that. My grades were very bad, and I needed someone who gave me lessons extra. And this guy was was
Yeah.
really, really intelligent. And he told
Mm,
me, besides helping me to understand math better, read Wittgenstein. And I did. And I thought, gosh, this guy was able to think. Yeah. So the philosophers, they did a lot for me to understand life better. But I also was doing a lot in my mind. Well, maybe this was the third life which I had parallel, because since I was a very young child, I
mm,
was telling myself stories in my mind. Today, I know that I remembered former lifetimes. I
mhm,
remembered being in Egypt, being in Greece, being in India and China and Japan and so on. And I always needed, I call it a crystallization point. I read something somewhere. I was watching a movie, and then for hours and hours, often for days and weeks, my mind was going into these stories. And
uh-huh,
I knew things I did not know before. When I was learning martial arts, in the
mhm,
beginning, in the first years, I
mm,
was studying martial arts in a very basic way. Later, the more I
mhm,
listened to the inner pictures, I did martial arts in a way which my teachers did not understand, because they did not teach this to me and they did not know about that. But I was doing it. I was not understanding it really, but I was doing it. I was able to do it.
mm,
And this was going on more.
yeah.
The more I was, the more I was structured in my mind. So the philosophy helped me to get a structure into that. I think without philosophy and without girlfriends who were grounding me, I would have gone into, maybe into psychiatry, because I just was so much in my mind.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Mhm.
And before we leave today, I was just thinking we've touched your adolescent, and I can understand you give me a, and we're talking only when you were like between 14 to 16 to 18. Is that the time you're
Mhm.
talking about?
Mhm.
So you were not yet, adult. You
No.
were like an
Mhm.
adolescent. So in
Mhm.
that adolescent age, I think you've had humongous experiences
Mhm.
comparatively to the kids in general, and
Mhm.
you were doing many different areas, and you
Yeah.
were a seeker. You
Yes. Right.
searched,
Right. Mhm.
you searched a lot. But tell me one thing for the kids, because you seem to be a very special kid in your times, and you still wanted to experience life. I see
Yes.
that you
Oh,
wanted
yes.
to.
Yeah.
So I think that when the teenagers listen to you, because
Mhm.
that's what I feel that you're really, somehow it's coming to me that when teenagers listen to a thing like that,
Mhm.
what is, I mean, you just told that what they should read and but what kind of attitude they must have in them, what kind of curiosities they must have in them, so that they can reach themselves, they can reach their own experiences of who they are.
Well, I think teenagers should learn to learn for themselves. There is learning in school and there is learning outside of school. And I wouldn't say that it was superfluous for me to learn in school. There are many things which I got there, and a kind of formal education is a good idea. But very important stuff I learned outside school. When I was reading in the library, when I was with experienced musicians who told me about what life is when you are a pro. Um, I studied a lot of life by working. So I think it's important that people understand that maybe learning in school is boring, but learning as such can be a fantastic adventure and you should not miss it. Just
Yeah.
find out. And today it's so much easier than at that time. Find out what is fascinating you, and then watch the videos on YouTube, and look into the groups on Facebook, what they discuss, and just grab the opportunity to learn. and you will find something which fascinates you, and then just go on. And if you can get access to that, your life will always be a great adventure, something fascinating, something filled with miracles, because you're opening up to these miracles. Life is only boring if you don't like learning.
I'm with you. So,
Mhm.
so well. I think I would like to end up here. This was
Okay.
absolutely a statement. Life is boring if you do not want to learn. Otherwise, life gives you miracles. I think
That's
this
right.
is absolutely original. I love this, Walter, and it was really original of you. I must say that I'm going to
Thank you,
really remember.
Sanya.
Thank you so much, Walter, for this beautiful journey that you're sharing with us, and we will continue until next
We
time.
will. We will. And thank you for being such a wonderful muse.
Thank you so much. Thank you.